Okay.
Crazy. It is crazy.
What up, y'all? We on here.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Circle Lounge, where we lounging around.
When you look at them from above, El Paso and Ciudad Juarez look like one big city. And in a sense, they are. Their cultures, their economies, and their people are tangled together in a million different ways.
In a million different ways.
It's almost as if this weren't one of the most contentious borders in the world. Take David Ro. He's a writer and musician who's American, according to his passport, but he grew up back and forth between the US and Mexico.
For 3 generations from my mother's side, we've had family that have lived both in Juarez and El Paso. So there was this constant crossing back and forth.
That's weird.
Here on the border, that's completely normal.
Just like the river is constantly shifting, sometimes you're on this side and sometimes you're on that other side. That's just part of our history, this idea that we're never really here nor there. And power always feels very anxious about it. So it has to try to tighten the border. It has to define this side is black, this side is white.
When he met me, he asked us to follow what he considers special, a monument that marks where the border was first drawn in the mid-1800s. It's one of very few places where you can stand with one foot in Mexico and one in the US.
So that right there on the other side of that fence is Mexico. On the US side, there's so much stuff that's been built up to make the border inhospitable over the years that it's very difficult to get to the line itself. The place we're going now is one of the very few places that you can do that. But to get there, you have to get to the other side of a privately built border wall. This private wall was built on private land owned by this random brick company that gave permission to this organization called We Build the Wall. Here we have a border patrol vehicle going very fast. Jesus Christ. Because the American Congress was not apportioning the money necessary for Trump to build the wall, they decided to just fundraise and use private money to start building a barrier around here.
Sure enough, we see the wall up ahead, along with something new and unexpected. The wall was recently extended onto government property with a gate that blocks the road leading to the monument.
Weird. This is weird.
So this wall is brand new. This is private wall. Yeah. Look, you used to be able to walk all the way to Monument Market number 1. This is just sad. I used to ride my bike here. There wasn't all this barbed wire wasn't here. I can't believe this. I have brought people here for years and years, and now I can't get through. That's still the United States. But now, thanks to this private wall, we can't walk all the way to the marker. Bastard.
So the border itself is just on the
They said they ain't taking my car.
It's part of the US property.
The group behind this wall raised many more millions of dollars than it spent, and later 4 people, including former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, were arrested and charged with using the project as a fundraising scheme.
Cartel,
We
Trump.
reached out to the group but didn't hear back, and Trump later pardoned Bannon. But in any case, these 2 miles of the wall are very real.
I'm honestly confused about how they can do that. Like this is a public marker, right?
Yeah, it's a public marker, but this guy is shutting everything off. You can see it all the way up here. He even, built like a nice little road so that the migra, the border patrol, can go up and down, right?
That is a high-ass wall.
And that's part of what it needs to be a fronterizo, right? This barbed wire is not only like a physical thing, it's a mental thing. You have to make a decision, what side you're on. You can't be on both sides. It's fucking crazy. It is crazy.
The idea that Mexico is a violent place full of dangerous people, and that the border is there to keep them out, is a powerful idea.
I am very, very thrilled to be here in the
Very,
great
very
state
thrilled,
of
yes.
Texas. Today,
I
we
am.
started a big, beautiful wall right on the Rio Grande.
It's also an old idea, much older than Donald Trump.
Hello, El Paso! The Border Patrol has 20,000 agents, more than twice as many as there were in 2004. There's a buildup that began under President Bush and that we've continued.
Americans tend to obsess over everything that crosses the border in one direction, from south to north. But the border's criminal economy wouldn't work without one key ingredient that goes the other way. Every year, hundreds of thousands of American guns are smuggled illegally into Mexico.
And how
America's
does that
powerful
happen?
firearms industry and its permissive gun laws are partly to blame.
The gun laws?
In Texas alone, there are more than 5,000
I say
stores
blame
where
Canada.
anyone with an ID, a credit card, and a reasonably clean criminal record can buy a gun.
Yeah.
And those are just the licensed ones.
Yep. You can get it done in like an hour.
Richard Garcia teaches firearms safety at one of them.
So with this one, we'll lock it back to the rear. That way we can actually check to make sure it's unloaded. You want to shoot some?
If I were to come in here looking for a rifle to protect myself and my home, what are you going to show me?
This kind of being what everybody's starting to clamor after. It's a semi-automatic rifle. It's got a safety on it. It's got sights. Very easy to use, very easy to point, and we also have an extendable buttstock. It's just very user-friendly.
You're selling guns to people. Do you ever worry about what they're going to do?
Now, it is at our discretion we can refuse service to people. If we ever feel that somebody may be trying to buy a gun illegally or purchasing for somebody else, we immediately stop the sale and tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help you. But if somebody decides that they're gonna buy a gun legally here and go sell it in Mexico, that's that guy's character. He's gonna break the law, whether he's doing it with guns. I mean, he might be doing it with drugs too. I can't control what an individual's gonna do.
One of the reasons so many guns get smuggled from the U.S. into Mexico is because it's easy.
Duh.
One extremely weird thing about this border is that in one direction, from Mexico into the U.S., it's one of the most tightly controlled, if not the most tightly controlled borders in the world.
Exactly.
In this direction,
But
from
if
the
you're
US into
going to Mexico, they
it's
don't give a fuck.
virtually open. If you just go through the nothing to declare lane,
Nothing.
you go through as we're going through right now. Nobody stops you. Nobody asks you anything. Perhaps you're subjected to a random inspection, but almost certainly not. So if you're a smuggler trying to move things in this direction, north to south, all you really have to do is put it in your car and
just drive.
head on over.
In the event that you do get stopped, it helps to have someone on the inside. This woman works for the Mexican government at a border inspection post, but she says she also works smuggling weapons for the Juarez cartel, sometimes hundreds at a time.
Las personas allá nomás necesitan un permiso cualquiera y puedes ir a comprar una arma. No es tanto requisito como aquí en México. Tiene que estar tu vida en peligro y aún así no te hacen caso, no puedes portarla. Solamente que seas un policía. Entonces en Estados Unidos, pues, como quien dice, cualquier gente puede traerlo. Es lo que se mira.
Cualquier gente puede entrar a una tienda de pistolas y comprar.
Y a comprar una.
¿Quiénes son esas personas las que cruzan la mercancía?
Pues más bien personas que usan drogas, porque son los que más fácil acceden. No piensan que los van a agarrar, o ellos nomás quieren el dinero y hacen las cosas.
Usualmente son personas que tienen pasaporte americano.
Sí, de Estados Unidos. Son los que lo
In case you think corruption is a uniquely Mexican problem, the whole system wouldn't work without some help from the other side. And the sorts of cross-border relationships that are common here exist in the underworld too.
¿Ustedes también tienen personas que trabajan del otro lado, que trabajan para las autoridades estadounidenses?
Sí, es mucho dinero. Si hay corrupción como la hay aquí en México, la hay allá. Yo estoy conectado con parte de mi esposo. Él trabaja de aquel lado. y él fue el que me metió en esto.
Él trabaja para las autoridades de aquel lado.
De aquel lado.
Chill, relax, comment.
For over 20 years, there's been a low-intensity war in Ciudad Juarez for control over the border. The city police agreed to show us some of what that looks like, as long as we didn't use their names or show their faces. They say they fear retaliation from the cartels. As rival groups and corrupt officials battle for turf, low-level gang members turn up dead alarmingly often.
Usted dijo que nos va a llevar a un lugar donde encuentran tirados. ¿Eso qué quiere decir?
Tirados son los cuerpos que localizamos por lo regular a las orillas de la ciudad. Normalmente lo que hacen es en la madrugada ir por algún vendedor de droga, contrario, y en la mañana van y los tiran temprano para que amanezcan ahí.
¿Y cada cuánto encuentran tirados?
Por lo menos una vez por semana.
The police took us to a cartel safe house that just days prior had been the scene of a brutal crime.
Chécate quién es eso. Solo que dejaron los prendidos. Checa el 1020. Está limpio.
This looks like a shack.
Yeah, dude.
Jesus Christ.
Metían a los contrarios vendedores aquí cercanos y los torturaban en este cuarto. Hasta matarlos. Eso es sangre.
That's fucked up.
Los alambres los utilizaban para ahorcarlos. Las paletas que hacían que se empezaban a doblar para que de alrededor del cuello se empezara a quedar sin respiración.
Now they're taking us to the place where they found their bodies.
Se vinieron para acá, lo hicieron entre los matorrales y hicieron el hoyo para aventar 3 cuerpos.
Y los 3 estaban allá adentro.
Sí, 2 hombres y una mujer.
Usted siendo siendo mexicano, siendo oficial mexicano, ¿qué piensa de la narrativa que hay en Estados Unidos sobre la violencia mexicana?
Los números ahí están, los homicidios ahí están. Me queda claro que aquí posan todo este tema de homicidios por la pelea de mandar la droga, pero también existe un control por las ventas allá, que son las armas que cruzan y compran aquí los cárteles y los grupos delictivos para cometer todos esos homicidios.
Si hubiera más control del otro lado de la frontera, ¿habría menos crimen acá?
Por supuesto, porque todas las armas, le digo, el 90% son de allá. Entonces, todos vienen, terminan aquí con grupos delictivos, la mayoría utilizándose para
I see where you're coming
en
from.
la ciudad.
I can honestly see where you're coming from. You can take anything to Mexico, bro.
Right.
There need to be more stricter rules.
One person who knows about violence in Juarez is Gustavo de la Rosa, a lawyer and longtime human rights defender.
¿En qué dirección está la frontera ahorita?
Hacia allá, a una milla de distancia de aquí, sí. Muy bien, muy bien.
De la Rosa helped expose the Mexican government's role in several murders and disappearances in the drug wars. In response, he received death threats and at one point had to flee the city.
Al otro lado de la frontera, en El Paso y en general en Estados Unidos, se habla de este lado de la frontera y en particular de Ciudad Juárez como un lugar peligroso, violento, como una especie de amenaza.
Dangerous just to talk to that man.
Acá, ¿cómo se habla de ese lado de la frontera?
Nosotros vemos al Paso como el barrio donde viven nuestros familiares que están un poquito mejor que nosotros, nada más un poquito, porque tienen muchas deudas y muchos muchos problemas de vida. Son muy aburridos además. Pero además el otro problema del Paso, para nosotros el Paso es un problema porque una cantidad muy grande de delincuentes viven en el Paso. Si Juárez no tuviera el Paso, no tendría violencia. Toda la violencia que se genera en Ciudad Juárez está vinculada con el Paso. Toda.
For years, people have contrasted the violence of Ciudad Juárez with the low crime rates of El Paso,
This shit is so fucked
to
up.
argue that the two cities are somehow fundamentally different. But even that sense of peace was shattered in August of 2019, when El Paso was visited by a distinctly American form of violence.
Today is the one-year anniversary of the mass shooting, the terrorist attack at this Walmart in El Paso. All of these
Yeah, I
crosses
remember
represent each of the people who was killed that day.
David Johnson, Luis Juárez, Arturo Benavides, Iván Filiberto Manzano.
The attacker was a white nationalist who came here specifically to target people of Mexican descent. He drove over 600 miles to get here, even though in the Dallas area where he lives, there are actually more Hispanic people in Dallas than there are here in El Paso.
Exactly.
But he still came here to the border to perpetrate this act of terrorism. Because the border is a symbolically important place.
I remember that.
After the shooting, it seemed everyone in El Paso knew someone who was affected. David Romo wrote a song about a childhood friend he lost in the attack.
In Spanish, cielo vista means sky. On August 3rd, 2019, a man armed with a Romanian AK-47 and a white supremacist manifesto walked into the same shopping strip and massacred 22 fronterizos. And one of the people who lost their lives at Cielo Vista that day was my friend Art Benavides, whom I remember as a good-natured kid who used to talk to me about everything and nothing under the sun. The massacre made me feel like, holy crap, man. It brought back all these memories on how naive we were, how innocent we were as kids. That there's somebody in a truck asking you for your citizenship, or when you cross from one light to another, they ask you, you know, who are you, where are you from, that barbed wire is normal, that all these deaths, you know, all these bodies that crop up are just normal.
When we tried to go to the monument marker, we were physically prevented from getting there. Mm-hmm. What was the significance of that experience for you?
And to me, that was such a symbolic place. It's a site of memory and a site of what it means to be a transnational. So yeah, there was anger that these guys, these Minutemen, can come in here and raise funds to fuck up my own land. You know, now I'm treated as a foreigner in my own land. I mean, I say, hell no. I'm not gonna let that barbed wire fence cut a line right down my middle of the brain. I'm not gonna decide one or the other. I'm gonna be both.
Good.
A few days later, we went back to the same place we had tried to visit with Roma. But this time we approached from the Mexican side, where there was no wall to restrict our movement. Once again, we saw families swimming in the river. We also realized that the international boundary here runs just west of the river, meaning they were inadvertently in the US.
La línea internacional de hecho está hacia ese lado. O sea, ahorita
estamos
parados en México. No, eso le digo, estamos parados en Estados Unidos. Sí, señor.
It was this small reminder that the border is a messy thing, impossible to define or control completely. Even in this border, which is, you know, probably the most heavily enforced border in the entire world. Drones, cameras, border patrol agents, the amount of resources that are devoted to making sure everybody knows exactly where this border is and never crosses it. Even here, you have these weird, absurd, in-between zones where people can cross the border without even knowing it. They can go swimming in another country without even knowing it.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles.
We all face shit. People of color always face some type of racism. You know what I'm saying? It's life. I
will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
For decades, the American government has been accused of intentionally flooding the streets with hard drugs. The CIA and law enforcement have supposedly been funneling drugs into the inner cities and to the African American community in particular as part of a covert effort to stop them attaining stability, building wealth, and achieving political power.
It is aimed at African American, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. And for the other non-African people, they should know that this directly will harm them too.
These ideas took particular hold in the 1980s with the emergence of the so-called crack epidemic. It's easy to understand how people of colour may not believe that US authorities have their best interests at heart. But do these particular drug charges stick? Did the intelligence agencies actually play a role in flooding American cities with cocaine? In this episode, we're exploring whether the CIA was actually responsible for the crack epidemic and how exactly this story gained so much traction. The story of the CIA and crack cocaine doesn't actually begin on the streets of LA or Miami. It begins in the jungles of Central America. In 1979, the dictatorial government of Nicaragua was overthrown by socialist revolutionaries called the Sandinistas. In response, right-wing groups known as the Contras began a brutal paramilitary campaign, receiving money and weapons from the CIA as part of the Cold War struggle against the Soviet Union.
If we cut off the freedom fighters, we will be giving the Soviets a free hand in Central America, handing them one of their greatest foreign policy victories since World War II.
But in 1982, Democrats in Congress passed laws to cut off support for the Nicaraguan rebels. So the Contras and their CIA backers had to find new ways of funding their struggle. What they found was cocaine. By the late 1970s, more people in the US were snorting coke than ever before. Most of it imported from Colombia. In the early 80s, smokable cocaine, or crack, exploded across American cities. This proved to be a gold mine for countless organized crime groups, even those backed by the CIA.
Today, cocaine and marijuana are found throughout our society from top to bottom. And that means corruption, top to bottom, and gang war violence.
The Contras were soon linked with Colombian cartels, and in 1985, reporters Robert Parry and Brian Barger broke an almost unbelievable story. They claimed Nicaraguan rebels were involved in cocaine trafficking, and that not only did the CIA know about these activities, they allowed them to continue in order to help fund the Contras' war effort.
When Bob Perry and Brian Barger got a hold of a CIA report revealing that they were working in the mid-1980s with Contras fighting the Sandinista government. They were warned by their editors that this was not something that was going to make the people that own their newspapers very happy, and it thus ended up losing their jobs.
At this point, the CIA strongly denied that they were involved in the drug trade.
Yeah, we already know that the world's fucked up. Especially with drugs. No, I'm just saying, we know that the government funded that shit.
Mm-hmm. Which one you want to say?
Do a fighting one.
The deadliest jaw-shattering question mark kicks ever seen.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Fight Focus. And for today's video, we will be covering the deadliest question mark kicks ever seen. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and comment what video you want to see next. Let's get to it. Popularized by especially bendy fighters like Sanchai, the question mark kick is one of the most deceptive kicks in fighting. Question mark kicks can be very effective when they are timed properly because of their deceptive nature. For a split second, the person receiving the attack may think it's going to the body. The kick is incredibly sneaky and is usually most effective once the opponent is patterned into movement. A few fighters have perfected the question mark kick in the UFC. Holly Holm and Luke Rockhold first come to mind, as both have damaged many fighters with the kick to a serious extent. For this video, we have comprised a list of instances where MMA and Muay Thai fighters were able to use the question mark kick to instantly knock their opponents out. So without further ado, these are the craziest question mark kicks ever seen. Number 12, Phet Samron. Thai fighter Phet Samron went toe-to-toe with Tang Tong in 2020. Their fight started off with a lot of kicks that would definitely not last for long after Phet Samron decided to go for a question mark kick that literally threw Tang Tong on the canvas like it was nothing. After the kick would land, Tang Tong would be on the ground clutching his face in pure agony. You can't help but to feel bad for the guy. I mean, come on, look how hard that landed. Number 11, Shamil Abdullayev. Shamil Abdullayev landed 2 question mark kicks in a row on his opponent Paulo Bueno. That alone is a rarity. As Abdullayev backed up, he landed a straight right that floored Bueno. What was definitely crazy was how Paulo allowed himself to receive 2 of these kicks back to back. Number 10, Alexander Ilic. Things were going well for the most part against fellow middleweight Alexander Ilic until he ended up on the wrong end of one of the best knockouts of 2019.
Ooh, knocked him out. Ooh, knocked his ass out.
Serbia's Ilic turned things around with an incredible question mark KO that sent Janikowski straight to the canvas and done for the night. Though there was a lot of hype behind him going into the fight, the former Olympian wasn't prepared for the sickness of Ilic, who let loose with a frankly ludicrous question mark kick to his head, dropping him to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Number 9, Lurdzila. Thai fighter Lurdzila Phuket top team scored one of the most brutal head kick knockouts in the sport's history.
High kick, too.
Lurdzila gonna try and finish him now.
He walked away.
A glancing left head kick floored Hepson halfway through the second frame, and though he was in trouble when he climbed back to his feet, he continued to plug away at the multiple world Muay Thai champion. Moments later, however, Lurdzila dug a deep kick into the invaded fighter's gut and then disguised the frightening left head kick behind a fake follow-up teep. As soon as Lurdzila's shin crashed into Hepsine's face, he was out, igniting the Foxwoods Resort Casino crowd. Number 8, Ian Gary. One of Ireland's most promising young prospects, Ian Gary, managed to score a picture-perfect question mark kick KO in his second pro outing.
Chances we're going to see him take, his kick for his debut was...
big shot from Ian Gary!
Facing the 4-0 Matteo Seglia on the main card, Gary managed to connect with a beautifully timed and executed question mark kick, one that seemed to barely touch his opponent but clearly did more than enough damage to force the fight-ending sequence. Number 7, Glave Feitosa. He even defeated Alistair Overeem via knockout back in 2004, but none will beat the question mark kick knockout he had over Alex Roberts.
Ooh. Damn.
You can see how high up he was able to get that kick since it was able to go over Robert's guard. Feitosa has finished fights with a question mark kick and has landed it several times throughout his career, including one that rocked 6'11" semi-chill. Number 6, Nicholas Dalby. Nicholas Dalby had already forged a fearsome reputation on the Scandinavian circuit, but that infamous picture-perfect question mark kick turned Sergei Churilov's legs to jelly and introduced him to a global audience. This was Lokomotivo Dalby, and the train kept on running. First stop was another question mark kick against undefeated Robert Allegretti, then earned him a second shot at Cage Warriors gold. Number 5, Rose Namajunas. Though this may not seem like a question mark kick, it accomplished its job in acting as one since Whaley thought the kick was going for her body before the kick dipped upwards.
Whaley has landed several of those inside low kicks.
Namajunas came out light on her feet and looked to establish her range with a piston-like jab, then Zhang returned fire with a few heavy leg kicks and aggressively looked to close the distance. Namajunas, however, remained calm in the eye of the storm and landed a beautiful left question mark kick that felled China's first UFC champion. Thug Rose didn't waste the opportunity to close the show, unleashing a flurry of hammer fists that prompted referee Keith Peterson to call a halt to the proceedings. Number 4, Yuta Kubo. This Japanese lightweight kickboxer has also had his fair share of knocking out opponents with a beautiful question mark kick. One of his more memorable performances came at the hands of Yoshimichi Matsumoto back in 2010 at K1 World Max.
Can be a spoiling fighter with power, which is rare in
This insane knockout occurred in the last minute and a half of the first round. Most of the fight occurred with Yuta walking Yoshimichi down and landing numerous low kicks and leg kicks to weaken his mobility. All that walking away and defending the body would go to shambles when Yuta landed a kick to the body, but later landed a beautiful question mark kick that turned Matsumoto into jello. Number 3, Holly Holm. Holm, who has in the past found success with kicks to the dome, executed a question mark kick that floored Correa, earning her first win since 2015. By the third round, the crowd sounded like they just wanted their money back, but luckily for them, Holm made sure they got at least some of their money's worth. After Correa taunted her opponent, Holm landed a beautiful question mark kick. The strike dropped Correa to the floor, and Holm rushed in for one more punch before the referee stopped the action at 1 minute and 9 seconds of round 3. If there is anything to learn from this video, it's to never taunt an opponent that can high-five your face with their foot. Number 2, Saenchai. The king of Muay Thai, Saenchai battled out at the Thai Fight Bangkok event, going up against Brazilian Henrique Muller. The scheduled for 3-round championship ended in the third when the Thai star landed a spectacular question mark kick to the head. After that beautiful kick had landed, it caused Muller's body to slowly lose control, as we've seen many times when a powerful kick lands on an opponent's head. Number 1, Israel Adesanya. Adesanya was 10-0 coming into the fight. After having Dare backed up to the cage, he cut him with a sharp elbow. A brief moment of separation allowed Adesanya to land a swift head kick, which ended the fight in the final seconds of the first round. As soon as the kick had launched, you can tell that Stewart was trying to block his body, but didn't have enough time to pull his hands back up to guard his face. The kick happened so fast that you could miss it in the blink of an eye. And that right there concludes this video. Let us know what we did in the comments below. Alright MMA fans, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, make sure to hit the notification bell, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Also, don't forget to comment below what video you want to see next.
You're not it's gonna be nothing but fights. Watch. But I do got premium. Got movies. Probably ain't gonna show my movies though. They're gonna have some type of encryption, you know. I think it was, let me see.
Yeah, pick a good one.
If you call my amazing mac and cheese bites balls, they're not balls because they're round. No, they're bites. And we're going to keep it classy. That's how we do in Harlem. We're going to keep it nice and classy. Hey everybody, Chef Tammy here from Harlem Seafood Soul, doing what so many of you have asked me so many times to do, which is share my recipe for our amazing mac and cheese bites. I learned from my grandmother that the only chance you really get to season your pasta is when you season the water. I put my seasoning salt. I don't measure this out, but we're gonna go with it. I want this water to turn orange, and then we're gonna just pour this in. The best thing for these mac and cheese bites is a little bit more than al dente.
I'm about to say,
you
find out Patty LaBelle and got on
We've
this
got a
thing.
fresh mozzarella cheese that gives you a nice pull. We have a mild cheddar and then an extra sharp cheddar. But this is what makes my mac and cheese bites simply amazing. Now, I done told all y'all my secret, okay? We family now. This is smoked Gouda cheese. And this smoked Gouda cheese has a nice smoky, kind of like a bacony flavor, but without the pork. Although we're using 5 different kinds of cheese, you can substitute any of these cheeses for whichever ones that accommodate your taste buds. Don't be afraid of the rind. The rind in the smoked Gouda, I think, is the most flavorful, so I love using the rind.
Yes.
You definitely don't want to add any feta cheese or anything that's really salty. A salty cheese, because you're already salting the pasta, you're seasoning the pasta with the cheese, so you want to stay away from anything that may be too salty, but I think anything goes. Like, I'm a child of the 60s, so we had those big government blocks of cheese, and my grandmother would add that to a little extra sharp cheddar cheese, and you talking about the best macaroni and cheese you ever had. Get this pasta and drain this off, and remember, put a little bowl or a pot or something underneath so that you can capture at least a half a cup or so of the pasta water. So now that I have this pasta, we're gonna just add it in there nice and hot. We want that cheese to melt in. At this point, you just dump everything in there. You don't have to, there's no right way or wrong way or what goes first, what goes last. Just add your cheeses, and then
that Gouda cheese for me
starts to melt in. I put my seasoning salt, just enough to cover, like maybe 2 tablespoons. Then you have some garlic powder, not salt.
Exactly. Powder.
And just enough to give it a nice flavor. And then I like a smoky paprika. So I like a lot of pepper. It's a good antioxidant. And mix that in. Add in a little bit of mozzarella cheese. All right, so there you have it. Real easy. I hope y'all caught all of that because I'm not going to give y'all this recipe again. It's always good to taste. Pasta's done, the cheese is done.
Yeah, I already know it's good. I know.
So this is where this comes in. Look at all that cheese. Look at all that cheese. See, this is why y'all be wanting these mac and cheese bites. And I'm enjoying slapping the out y'all with the flavor. This is my most popular item. I believe is my most popular item because when people bite into it, I've had so many people say they taste the love that I put in to my food. And that's important for me because I know if I'm gonna go spend my hard-earned money somewhere on some food, I want it to be good. I want to know that the person preparing it has done everything right, and it's made with love. I'm gonna take some smoked Gouda cheese, and for intents and purposes, we're just gonna put that on top. Cover this with either some plastic wrap or foil paper and sit it in the fridge. I would say if you're gonna make them the same day, then put them in the fridge for at least 2 hours, because you want this to firm up and ready and easy to roll. Your mac and cheese bites have been chilling in the fridge for at least 2 hours. This is where we start to make the magic happen. I like to use gloves when I'm on camera showing y'all shit. At home, I just use my bare hands because we're gonna fry these afterwards. Using this fancy scooper, because I just want you to see how easy it is to use with this. Once you get the hang of it, you can use a regular spoon.
No fried booty crumb in my mac and cheese bite.
There.
But she washed her hands.
You're gonna put it down in that. Roll it right in there. Nice little bump there. And that's your beginning of your mac and cheese bite.
Okay.
So with our hands, we want to just make sure we keep the circle tight. We're gonna dip it in and roll it in the egg. You take and you roll it in the breadcrumbs.
Okay.
You want to squeeze and roll and almost make love to it, because you know this shit gonna be so good when it come out of that fryer. Basically what you're doing is you're tightening the breadcrumbs, and if you need to give it a little extra dip, you see where it's starting to maybe open up a little bit, roll them around again, and then you have a nice beautiful bite. And if you wanted to, what I do often is after I roll them out, I actually put them in a freezer bag and freeze them. They'll stay good in there for 3 months. You take them out, let them thaw down to room temperature, and then fry them. Or bake them. These are actually really, really good baked in the oven. We usually sell out of our mac and cheese bites usually shortly after lunch, and that equates to maybe 50 to 75 orders.
That's easy,
so
too.
each order contains 3 mac and cheese bites. We got us a pan of mac and cheese all ready to go. The key to these mac and cheese bites, when you know that they're done, the coating is going to solidify around it, and then you're going to see like a little bit of that cheese pop out. That way you know that all that cheese inside has melted. What you don't want to do is, if you're using a pan like this, is let them sit on the bottom of the pan. We don't want that little burn mark on the bottom. What inspires me to cook is that I've always loved cook. I'm a foodie. Inside of this body is a really big girl who just loves good food. I was that kid that stayed in the kitchen with my family when they were cooking, and being in the kitchen with them, watching them do what they did. It was always a beautiful experience now that I look back on it. And so I have all of these recipes, and I really started Harlem Seafood Soul with just wanting people to try and taste my food, taste my cooking. I get pleasure watching people, a new customer, take the first bite and then become a part of our family. Because you're coming back after that. I got you after the first bite. So what we have here is some beautiful bites. Y'all see this? Y'all see the cheese popping out? Yeah. That cheese is popping out, letting you know that it's melted on the inside. And literally 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes tops, until you see that little bit of cheese trying to pop out. So we're gonna put that one on the side. There we go. Don't let kids bite into these. That cheese is hot. I have to warn parents all the time. They give them right straight to the kids, and then they bite right into it. This is hot melted cheese, parents, so be careful. When I decided to start Harlem Seafood Soul, I didn't think about any place else that I wanted to do business but on 125th Street. Those are my stomping grounds. I wouldn't want to bring my business to any other community than the one for which I grew up in, because I wanted people to see that you can be that Rose in Harlem. You can overcome any kind of adversity and do what you love doing. In Harlem, where I come from, it's the toughest crowd in the world. They're gonna tell you immediately, I mean immediately, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction, if your food is good or not. They'd have threw me off that corner a long time ago if my food wasn't. And I like to think that my food is the best around, and that's what I enjoy. Feeding people as if you were part of my family. If you were sitting in my kitchen in my home, like I would feed my mother or prepare a dish for my grandmother that would make her proud. I used to, before she left, try to make some of her best dishes so that she would be proud of me, because there was no recipe book handed down. So it was just our talks. And my memory, her memory, and the instructions that she would give me. Sometimes the cussings out she would give me, you put too much goddamn salt in it. She would tell me right away. And
I know them things look fire,
I learned.
Yo.
Spending time with my grandmother and my ancestors, when I'm in the kitchen cooking. I feel like
I'm thinking about going to get the ingredients tonight.
And
man, that shit look fire.
I want to make them proud. Bite it open.
You need to get that thing where she was taking them out with
all that cheesy goodness on the
inside. You gotta wait in the refrigerator for 2 hours.
That's what I'm saying. You gotta prepare for that. But still get it though.
You gotta prep. Man.
Done.
Can't do it tonight.
Well done. It's heaven in a bite. Bite. That's what it tastes like. For the recipe of these amazing mac and cheese bites, please click the link below. Come uptown to 125th Street, 7th Avenue, Adam Clayton Powell. Remember, all my folks below 96th Street, we're one stop on the A train to 125th Street. Come check us out.
Hold on, you know we about to click this little link real quick. Where is that? Where the link at? Right here. We're gonna see what's in this thing. 25 minutes plus 24 hours. Shit.
I told you, baby, we gotta let that sit in the fridge.